Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. I'd like to thank you for holding this hearing. Certainly, it's not expected of the Intelligence Committee, and I'm very pleased that we have so many members present today. And I'd like to beg your indulgence. I know you spoke of a time limit, but it is very difficult to talk about all of this information in 10 minutes, but I'm going to try and do it as quickly as I possibly can. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm here today to testify about the failure of the Central Intelligence Agency to conduct a serious and thorough investigation into the allegations of CIA involvement in cocaine trafficking to fund its contra-war activities. Unfortunately, my fear that the CIA would be unable to investigate itself has been confirmed with this report. The Inspector General's report lacks credibility. It is fraught with contradictions and illogical conclusions. In a September 3rd, 1996 memo, then CIA Director John Deutsch laid out the framework for this investigation. In his instructions to CIA Inspector General Frederick P. Hitz, Director Deutsch stated, "I have no reason to believe that there is any substance to the allegations published in the Mercury News." Despite his premature conclusion, a serious, substantial, and credible investigation and interview process would have proven him wrong. If the CIA director's premature conclusion was meant to direct the final outcome, he has succeeded. This report's sweeping denial of the CIA's knowledge of drug trafficking related to the Contras defies the evidence and the logic that the CIA should have known. From the days of the CIA's first response to the allegations raised in the Dark Alliance series, many skeptics believe that the CIA could never produce a credible or truthful review of wrongdoings by its own agency. These skeptics could point, if they'd like, to this Sunday's Los Angeles Times to confirm their fears. The Times reported, in another case, that after 37 years, the CIA finally admitted publicly the most profound deception imaginable on an American family. Thomas Pete Ray and his top-secret squadron of National Guard bombers were shot down during a CIA bombing mission in the Bay of Pigs debacle. For 37 years, the CIA denied that Mr. Ray and his squadron even existed, much less were shot down by Cuban troops in 1961. Only this month, faced with a document obtained by Freedom of Information Act request by the National Security Archives, did the CIA finally admit the truth 37 years later. My deep concern about the allegations raised in the Dark Alliance series that my government could have in any way been involved in or had knowledge of drug trafficking has caused me to spend much of my own time and resources to find out more about these allegations. After reading the Dark Alliance series, I interviewed Gary Webb, the writer of the series. And by the way, Mr. Chairman and members, Mr. Gary Webb is here today. He's sitting right here in this seat, and I invited him to come. He's put a lot of time and work into this investigation, and I have been working with him since the first day that I read it, and I think that he should be privy to all information as he continues his work in this area. I interviewed Gary Webb, the writer of the series. I invited him to come to my district in South Central Los Angeles to respond to questions from local residents. My community encouraged my investigation and supported me in my efforts to delve deeper into these allegations. I personally interviewed a number of key figures in the Dark Alliance series. I first met with and interviewed Mr. Alan Finster, who was the attorney for Ricky Ross. Then I drove to San Diego to the Metropolitan Detention Center, where I interviewed Mr. Ricky Ross, the young man who was trafficking in drugs in South Central Los Angeles that were being sold to him by Mr. Norman Meneses and Mr. Danilo Blandone. He was being held in the Metropolitan Detention Center facility on drug charges. I also then drove to a restaurant in the Valley where I met with Mr. Celerino Castillo, the DEA agent who had investigated the drug trafficking operation at Ilopango Airfield in El Salvador. Castillo had documented that the CIA directed this drug trafficking operation out of 2 hangars using Contra Supply Network as a route for shipping drugs into the United States. I then interviewed former LAPD officer Mike Rupert, who states he was forced to leave the LAPD after he uncovered a connection between the CIA and narcotic trafficking operations in California and Louisiana. Mr. Rupert also was interviewed by the CIA for its report. I met and had numerous telephone conversations with Mr. Jerry Gazzetta, a detective with the City of Bell and a key member of the multi-agency task force working with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department investigating the Blandone narcotics operation. Gazzetta was a level 1 informant whose information was the basis of the affidavit of LA Sheriff Tom Gorton that resulted in the October 1986 raid of the Blandone operation's 14 sites in Southern California. I visited the records division of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and uncovered the sheriff's reports regarding the October 1986 drug bust. I was the first to obtain the copies of the documentation regarding the raids. They had said prior to that time that they did not exist, they could not be found, and I literally went in and by accident was able to access these documents, and they quickly tried to retrieve them from me, and of course I refused to leave until I had copies of what should have been public documents. On January 3rd, 1997, using my own personal funds, I flew to Nicaragua to meet with Enrique Miranda Jaime, a former Sandinista official and drug partner of Norman Meneses, a central figure in the allegations in the Dark Alliance series. I was contacted by someone who had information about the Colombian cartels and their connection to Norman Meneses. When I arrived in Nicaragua, I was taken to the prison in the town of Grenada by State Department representatives where I met with Miranda himself. Mr. Miranda told me some of the information that he gave to the CIA in this investigation, which is reported on pages 54 and 55 of the IG's report. Mr. Miranda currently is in prison after being convicted for smuggling 764 kilos of cocaine with his partner Norman Meneses.